should get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
A large part of what we do here on the channel is address popular questions that I'm currently getting from a lot of you guys. And recently, I don't know what it is, but an influx of people have been asking me about their own mentors. They've been like, oh, John, look, I really want a mentor. I don't know how to get one. Hey, John, I have a mentor and I don't know if they're teaching me too well. Or, hey, John, this guy wants to mentor me. Should I let him? So in today's video, I want to go ahead and chat with you guys a little bit about graffiti mentors and more or less what you should look out for, some red flags, and my experience in that entire field. Because for those guys who are new here, I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I know that sounds crazy saying it out loud, but you know, I got a young start. So to start off this conversation, I had a graffiti mentor and he was phenomenal. Demer from the Walnuts crew and VS crew. I actually don't think he's in Walnuts anymore, but definitely VS crew. And I am extremely grateful for this guy. I think one thing that you'll really get value from any graffiti mentor that's half decent or better is they'll show you the ropes of graffiti. They'll kind of bring you into this whole entire ecosystem and show you the ways around it. They'll teach you the do's and do nots. They'll show you, you know, what you're supposed to hit, what you're not supposed to hit, what to stay away from, and other stuff like this. That kind of information is invaluable if you intend to get up. But as you guys know, here on the channel, I don't really promote doing illegal graffiti. And most really experienced graffiti artists will tell you the same. But we can't deny that that is one thing that a graffiti mentor really brings a lot of value to. Now, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with how art forms function, there's three major pillars of every single art form. You have art form specific fundamentals, which are the fundamentals specific to that art form. You have elements of art, which are the laws of every single art form. And then you have techniques. Techniques are how you actually perform the art form and how you use the tools associated with you doing that art. For example, if I wanted to go ahead and do one of my many oil paintings, I can just do an underpainting, I can tone the canvas, I can glaze, there's many different techniques I can use. In graffiti artists are masters of technique, but most graffiti artists lack knowledge as far as the actual art form specific fundamentals. Most graffiti artists don't even know the art form specific fundamentals exist, and they couldn't recite what precisely the art form specific fundamentals are. To make matters worse, they also don't know what the elements of art is and how it functions. In fact, over my years of doing graffiti, I've seen graffiti legends and kings and everyone underneath that laugh at the idea of fundamentals. And while sure this has been changing over the past decade, it's still a matter of fact that most graffiti artists don't know the elements of art and art form specific fundamentals. And those are the two most important parts of any art form. Techniques are some of the easiest things for most graffiti artists to learn. That's something that you can very easily learn with very minimal practice in most cases. So the value a graffiti mentor is going to bring you is they're going to teach you the most easiest thing to learn in graffiti, that being techniques. Alright, while sure that's not a negative thing, that's certainly good, it lacks the actual teachings of the two most important pillars of any art form, elements of art and art form specific fundamentals. Well, in my experience of watching graffiti legends and really incredible graffiti artists teach other people is they actually do more damage than any good. Because of their lack of knowledge for these fundamentals, they end up teaching a lot of misinformation. Most of their teachings are misinformation. And while there certainly might be a couple of good nuggets in there, the amount of misinformation you're getting completely outweighs the actual good information that you're getting, meaning it's doing more damage than any good. Most graffiti mentors, you go ahead and throw a sketch their way and they look at it and they go, oh dude, you need to add more arrows here because that would look dope. Oh man, you should reposition this letter because reasons I can't tell you why. Oh my gosh, your 3D, although it's completely wrong, it looks dope, and they'll never actually articulate anything of worth. Now the issue isn't to say that they suck at graffiti, that's not at all the case. That'd be a complete and total lie. All it means is they don't understand the science of graffiti. They don't understand the three pillars of every single art form, and they certainly don't understand how to teach. That's a totally different skill. These things are essential if you have a graffiti mentor. If your graffiti mentor doesn't know what the three pillars of art are, and they can't recite the elements of art, the art form specific fundamentals, and they can't help you with techniques, then they're not doing you any good. You see, most graffiti artists, in general, like if you take the mass populace of graffiti, the majority of them are not skilled enough at graffiti to even teach graffiti in the first place. If you take out the small percentage that is good enough in skill level to teach, the majority of those aren't skilled enough at teaching to teach. That means you're only left with a tiny fraction of people that are both skilled enough in graffiti and teaching in order to actually be able to articulate the knowledge that they have about letters. And that, my friends, is a tiny tiny fraction. I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I've been doing graffiti for more than 20 years, and I have only ever seen maybe like 2 graffiti artists that are both knowledgeable enough about teaching as well as have the skill in graffiti to effectively teach. Fine art mentors though, I mean the list goes on, because the standard of knowledge for the average fine artist is much higher than the standard of knowledge for every graffiti artist. I mean, you guys see it, you don't need me to tell you. How many graffiti artists do you know in person scoff at the idea of fundamentals? And the ones who don't scoff at the idea, how many of them actually understand it yet? My point being, graffiti is very late to this party, and they're still playing catch up. As a result, most graffiti artists aren't able to properly teach anybody, and that's a massive red flag. That is precisely why I always recommend get yourself a fine art mentor. Even if you don't like fine art, I don't care if you hate portraits, if you hate landscapes, trust me, the lessons you get from fine art are going to be exponentially better and more useful for your graffiti than the lessons you get from a graffiti artist. Let me explain why. Remember how we talked about how graffiti artists are masters of technique, but not really masters as far as understanding the science behind the other 2 pillars of art forms? Well, for fine artists, this is not the case. Fine artists really set the bar high for not only understanding the elements of art and the art form specific fundamentals, but they also did it for technique. And what a fine art mentor is going to do for you is they're going to expose you to this knowledge. They're going to expose you to the elements of art. They're going to teach you how the elements of art work, how it functions, and the science behind all that. Then they're going to go ahead and teach you about the art form specific fundamentals for fine art specifically. But you can use that knowledge and transfer it to graffiti yourself in order to teach yourself the art form specific fundamentals for graffiti. Not to mention the fact that I do have tutorials on my YouTube channel that already teach you those things. That way you can at least come back here and learn those things as well. And then from there, all that's left is to learn technique, the easiest part of any art form, for the most part. And how do I know that that works? Well, because that was my journey. I had Demmer as a graffiti mentor. He taught me the ethics and the ropes behind graffiti, taught me how to navigate that landscape, sprinkled on a little bit of information as far as technique and a little bit of the art form specific fundamentals, taught me what letter structure was. But it wasn't until I got my fine art mentor that I really learned graffiti. It wasn't until I understood the 3 pillars of art and how they function that I was able to take that information from my fine art mentor and then teach myself graffiti. And that's how I was able to develop and establish graffiti's art form specific fundamentals, while establishing how graffiti uses the elements of art as well. A lesson that's going to be essential for any graffiti artist who wants to really have a master level understanding of graffiti and the science behind it. Now keep in mind, this video isn't to say that if you don't know the science behind graffiti then you cannot be good at graffiti. That's not at all what I'm saying. The same way you don't have to be a master level chef and understand everything behind cooking in order to make yourself your own dinner, you can still do the same thing with art. You can have practice and years of trial and error in order to know what you like aesthetically and make it look good. You'll have a master skill level, but you won't have a master knowledge level. Those are 2 different things. But if you want to have both, you gotta learn the 3 pillars of every single art form. Otherwise, you'll never have that master knowledge level. And that's the trap most graffiti artists fall into. And as a result, they're not able to articulate the lessons that they know in their head, and all that information stays locked in their head, making them ineffective at teaching. But dudes, that pretty much wraps up today's video. That explains why most graffiti mentors are completely horrific at teaching, and they do more damage than any good they could possibly bring you. That also explains why you should probably get a fine art mentor instead, as they'll teach you everything a graffiti mentor will teach you and more. I want to hear from you guys though. Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments down below. Do you have a graffiti mentor, and do you think they're any good at actually teaching? Now if you're in the process of still learning the basics and you want to learn really easily how to do graffiti, we actually published a bunch of ebooks that teach you the basics. You can find those in the cards above, and be sure to go ahead and check out this tutorial up here. It's got the best graffiti tutorials you'll find anywhere online. Trust me, give them a watch. And down here we got even more graffiti content for you. So feel free to go ahead and subscribe if you're new here. I'll catch you guys next week, but until then, peace.